Hello again. We have something. It's not very good. This is falling off, but you'll be alright for a minute. Yeah, we have something here. This is another one of Rich's Harley Bentons, and this is a Harley Benton VT series Telecaster. And if you see it, it's a thing of quite some beauty. I mean, look at that grain, look at the finish on that. I mean, it's not great if you don't like thick poly, but this is a great big thick finish. Ooh, there's a strange, oh no, it's a sort of vein in the wood or something. Anyway, so you've got full thickness body by the looks of it, for this VT series vintage Telecaster. Who knows what that stands for? Probably that. We've got a chromed bridge. That's interesting. It's not even sitting in the string in the slot, but anyway, a chrome bridge. Wilkinson single coil at the bridge. Wilkinson neck pickup. We've got what looks like a bone nut, but I can't quite believe that is. Two metal string trees, which to my mind are horrible. But you've got split post tuners. You've got a satin finished neck, which is a nice contrast to the heavy duty gloss of the body. You've got a skunk stripe. You've got a truss rod adjuster at the top end, and this has a little thing on there that says True Reality. Is it True Quality? I don't know whether it's quality or quality. I think it says Reality. I like to believe it says True Reality Sound, which would be quite amusing if it did. Anyway, so you can see, you know, this is really nice timber, two-piece timber here. Well, yeah, but it's interesting. The centre line of the timber isn't the centre line of the string ferrules, so the centre line is in the middle of the fourth one along from this side here. So that's an interesting thing, and it's not so visible. Well, it is actually. It's off centre. The pin is centre, but the actual join of the body is off centre. It's not so bad actually, because it's such a nice grain. Excuse me, that the eye is sort of distracted from that. Now, looking over this, you know, it's a nice thing. Of course, Harley Bentons, it can be argued, are let down, if any. You know, some people think, by their headstocks. Actually, you know, when you get used to it, they're not that bad. You know, that little shape. It's a good way around the Fender licensing thing of old. And they do exactly the same job. The strings are all in line, go straight over the nut, you know, for the best possible travel. I've seen somebody talk about this, and they've claimed it was a single piece. They thought it was a single piece neck. It isn't. It's a fingerboard on top of a neck. But there we are. So really, strictly, the skunk stripe is purely cosmetic in that respect. Anyway, but it is not bad at all. When you realise that the price for this thing is, I think it's £112 for this, brand new. 122 if you, or 120-ish if you include shipping. So £120 for this. It isn't bad at all. Now, the question of what are the frets like is the age-old question. Now, on the treble side, which is the area where I guess you get the player comes most into contact with the fret ends, it's pretty much all good. There's a few little chips of the lacquer is chipped off the fingerboard here, right on the edge. Is that a blemish? Yeah, a little blemish there on that fret. Somebody's You can see that somebody's already got their finger onto it. There's a bit of finger oil on there. They've tried to rub it off with the finger, maybe leaving quality control. A bit of blemish on this edge here. And over on this side, everything looks pretty good, except I did see a couple of frets standing up. And maybe just right at the end, maybe the last fret or so is struggling a little bit. But overall, it looks pretty good. Now, obviously, I can't play this thing, but what are we feeling the action's like? Well, it's reasonably high actually. It's reasonably high, but at the action they've chosen for it, it's playable. You know, and that's the old "is it playable out of the box" question. So let's see what we got. Bridge. Upside down. Yeah, sticky. Now the action's pretty ropey down here. This A string is way too high compared to everything else, but right. Well, that's pretty high and it's dead on the last fret, which does confirm that this last fret is sticking up a fair bit. It's sticking up mainly in that area there, or either that, we've got a very low one there, so something not right there. That's before we take it down to a more, more target-like action. Let's find me, please, the adjuster thingy. So let's see what happens when we go down to a more familiar. Oh blimey! So this is coming at over 2.5 millimeters on the last fret. So that's kind of set high, or it's set playable for this fingerboard. Let's see what actually happens when we go down. If it's struggling at 2.5 to 3 millimeters, we're gonna be dead as a dodo by the time we get down to the 1 point. Oh god, it's not even 1.5 at the moment. Let me just check something, by the way. Yeah, again, very flat. I seem to spot that. Let's do this manually. It's a little bit on the crunchy side, these little grub screws, but so I don't know if you can see, there's an amazing difference between these two these strings. So okay, so we got about 1.5, so it's still really a little bit high, and then so we can take this one down a fraction and this one up a tiny fraction. Now let's just manually adjust the other ones, or visually. Wow. They sort of slide from side to side a bit, these two. There's quite a lot of adjustment room if you want to drag the saddles around a bit. This E and A are way high. So I'm just getting a bit closer. So about 1.5, just under. It's high again. You can see it. So look, millimeters 1.3-ish, 1.2-ish. I'm struggling at the 1.0 mark, but you know, it's not bad approximation. A little bit on the buzzy side. Not too bad. Dead strings are a bit dead. Typical. Tuned. Detuned. So that's how much slack there is in the factory string. Da 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 da. See? So the bottom line is the action this shipped with is very high, and I suspect you'll find struggling to play there. So that's what we'll need to address, as always. You wouldn't want it this high as it shipped. You know, a beginner would be well put off. Hard to get these split post tuners up when they're upside down. Okay, so a bit of sympathetic harmonic going on up there. Right, so now we've got a low set action to work with, and as sort of predicted, some that could be something else. Could be things hitting things. Actually, it's not so bad. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this off because it's getting in the way, and giving it false readings. You're going to want to take, well, you might want to take your own plastic off there, but if you don't, it's gonna, there's plastic on this, pretty much everything, apart from the bridge. There's plastic on here and here, and it's sort of bunched up around the pickup holes. Okay, so let's just check these again. It's actually a bit high still. Yeah. Okay. It's interesting how these are going over the slots. It's like they don't quite fit. This one's sitting higher than the others, but hey. Yeah, it's like it's one slot all the way across, or one gauge slot, and it, obviously the smaller strings drop straight into it, but the low E sits a bit proud on it, doesn't really fit quite in there. So where I'd want it sitting down a bit, it's still a bit, probably a bit high, but yeah. Okay, now I'm going to give it a bit more pull, just get as much of the slack out of it as possible. So first recommendation for this would be, well, first thing we've done is lower the action. Then the next recommendation would be to to replace the these metal sort of butterfly string trees with tusk ones. Bit of a zing going on here. Now, if you were a beginner, the grippiness of these nut slots would have your guitar so out of tune so quickly you'd be frustrated. So that's something we need to take care of in this. Okay, so we've got a nice low action on here right now, and the question is, quite simply, does it play? Well, surprisingly good actually, which makes it all the more bizarre that they started this thing off with such a bizarrely high action. No need to. I mean, it's got a few little buzzes here and there, and it will benefit from a very light level. And also, the frets are the usual, not terribly smooth, so we'll take care of that. But not as bad as I expected. Often you sort of jump to a conclusion when you see the action set really high, and you think, whoa, they're putting it up there to cover up for the uneven frets. But a little bit of that. But so the first thing I'm just going to re-look at, or something I'm going to look at here again, is the amount of relief in this neck. And it is a small amount, but it's very small. And a bit like the other ones, I think it would benefit from a very small amount more. So first, pickups all working, volume. Tone. Good. Everything works. Let's just clear this out of the way for the time being. Now, yeah, so very little, almost no relief in the neck. So let's add in a bit of relief. So we're going to go counterclockwise to lighten the load on the neck, if I can get a decent grip at it. Maybe I have to move some strings. There's a string tree right in the middle, basically, kind of in the way, preventing straightforward access to it. I'm going to get it that way. If you can't get it from this angle, yeah, just about. Right, that was about an eighth of a turn just to start with, and we'll see where it goes. Play it backwards. Upside down, power chords. Sorry. Okay, so yeah, well, it's really good. If you were a young person and you just got this out of the box and everything's kind of stuck where it is. Yeah, if you just got this out of the box, and if they had set the action low, you might have, you might not be that upset about it. I mean, not bad. I mean, it's not perfect, but it's not in tune very well, because playing it upside down and back to front isn't easy. Right, so here we are at the usual place, checking the relief a little tiny bit more than was there before. Might even go a fraction more if we can get purchase. There we go. Maybe not, maybe no, maybe yes. Then can you get it out then when you're under tension? I aim for somewhere around 0.2 millimetre, or 0.15 to 0.3 max. Don't go anywhere else really. I'm just going to get one more note from this. Slight sitaring. What is that song? Something from the 70s, 80s. Dun, 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 dun. Specials? No. Oh, you know what it'll be? It'll be that blasted. Come on, Eileen. There you go. Alright, so look now, right, so we have some relief in this neck, a little bit of relief, a bit more than there was in the beginning. In the beginning there was no relief. That's okay. We have an action that's good. We may have changed, I doubt it will have changed any, hardly any from that tiny change. That's, we're looking at 1 point, it's a little low for 1.2, it's about 1.34, something like that. And then down this end we've got 1.6, 1.5, 1.6. So that's okay for those two factors. And then at this end we have reasonable heights above the first fret. They're not unusually high, and they're not ridiculously low either. So it looks a pretty good range actually. If I check it with a 0.3, it's all above 0.3, so what there is there's room for me to just lower those a tiny little bit, but in doing so we'd hopefully pick a larger gauge file, and then we can basically widen it out so we won't get so much whatever that word is, sticking. So again, this is a tens. That's, don't know what's windmilling, sitaring. It's funny, isn't it, when you get that and you can't quite name what it is. Now the break angle over here is quite low, even though you never know, it could be. Let me try something. I wonder if the angle's wrong on that nut slip. Sometimes it's deceptive. You think because the first fret action is reasonably good, you can mistake that for equaling, for meaning that the break angle is okay, which actually the break angle technically, I don't know how to describe this. If the angle of the how would we say this? Okay, if you, depending on how the nut's cut in here, this could be less of a break angle than it actually looks, and I'm wondering if that's got something to do with this one in particular. And I figure if I'm going to cut this a little bit more, I have a feeling that zing is going to go away. So let's go with our find a set. What do we want? That one. Oh. 16 will be number 2. We want a 13 for number 1. Yeah. So you notice that I never ever use a 9 anymore for any purposes, or even a 10. Nothing's ever done at 10. So we're going 13, 16, 13, 16, we have 24, or something, I haven't got anything other than 24. 24. 24 all broken ones here, 32 because they're the ones I use most often, 32, 42 and 48. 48. Okay, so let's get this. Let's get a look at this. Right. Down we go. Oh, sorry. Right. So I'm going to start. With the G. Move out. Now I know it's pinging. Actually, I think it is bone. Well, that's pretty cool. We'll see when I start. Yeah, I think it's bone. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to check the height, and I'm going to, first thing I'm going to do is just use the edge of this V to widen the slot, just to basically open it up so that it's not gripping quite the same way. Now I'm just looking down this, what there is here, there's something down the middle of this nut that I don't know if it's some, I don't know if it's something they've put in there, but it's in exactly the same place. I don't know if it's you know, blemish, no, you know, fault or something. What can be at fault with a nut, but anyway. So what I'm going to just do is I'm just going to use this to take this down, and I'll keep the angle hopefully as tipped back as possible. That's cleaned out whatever was in there, so that gunge. So we've got a wider slot, and we've got the goo or whatever was in that slot being cleaned out now as we head for the right height, which is going to be 0.3. I'm having to be very careful because I don't want to, the further the fingerboard sticks beyond the nut, the easier it is to clip it as you're cutting. And a lot of people, a lot of techs I suppose that I've seen, don't warn or aren't concerned about that, and that's possibly because they're not heading for such low actions, a lot of people. I'm not saying it's the right thing, I've been over this in the previous video for the Les Paul Harley Benton Les Paul copy, but the point being is if you happen to be aiming for a very low action and you are putting a backwards angle in, as we are here, then you get quite low to the ground, and you run the risk of running into the back of the fingerboard part. So there's still clearance there, and the angle doesn't need to be huge, but obviously the further back you go with this, the smaller the angle you've got free to work with. So this is sort of comfortably with 5 to 10 degrees, I'd say. I think it's cutting as bone would cut, so I'm quite pleased with that. Yeah, good. It's good they've used bone. So still a fair bit to go. The beauty of getting a decent break angle is that it puts enough tension on the string, or sorry, on the nut, as the string rises up the nut and then sort of launches off the front point, and you get the cleanest note. I think I'm very close to the mark there. Let's stop for that for a minute. These strings are a bit rusty actually. Can hear it pinging away. Difficult to turn back to front. Okay, so let me just measure this first, see what sort of clearance we've got. Bit of room, so we've got enough room to start with a widening with the jeweler's file. When it comes to it, some people get freaked out and go, well, that's a sort of making a V notch and I don't want that, I want a straight up and down shape and whatever. In truth, you want the best performing guitar, not tiny details, you know. Don't get hung up about little things, little aesthetic things that don't really make much difference. What we're aiming to do here is get this to a perfect playing height. And to do it without it pinging and sticking in the slots, so that if a little bit of work with the V notch file helps that along so that there's no chance of it sticking and pinging, then we ought to do that. We're going for the function more than anything else. So all the time you can hear that there's still clearance on the first fret. So the small adjustments I'm making are still, we're taking it down a little bit. It takes quite some time before we get to the point where this string is actually low enough to start hitting the feeler gauge blade. And it's just a matter of taking it slowly. Okay, still a gap, I can still see the shadow. So yeah, it's my son sent me this gift, a late birthday present. I've inherited his GoPro session camera. But he doesn't use really at the moment, so I'm kind of using it. He's lent it to me or given it to me, and I tried it out today with a fixture that puts it, I put it right on the end of my headless Oakcaster number 16, because the headstock part, or the string attachment at the end, that's just on, string attachment was just the right size to put the little, well, ultra sticky foot thing on. So it was sort of tried it out in the garden, which was great, and I got some sort of test footage, you know, of it stuck to the end of the guitar. So I've got a gig on Sunday, an outdoors one down in the town, so I'm going to charge it up and put it on there for the afternoon. That should be fun. Okay, so here we are on this that's fixed it. Isn't it amazing how that tiny imperfection in the nut slot was causing it to sitaring. Okay, so that's good, and all I'm going to do now is just take it down that last little bit, and then we'll move on to the 3 bass strings. This won't need that much adjustment. I'm just going to be trying to be careful to get the angle right, keep it pointing backwards or down. Yeah, so I'm going to take the GoPro session and get some of that footage off the front of the headstock, as it were, top end of my guitar, and I tested the sound briefly. It's I'm not sure it's quite as good as the Sony sound on this camera here, but it wasn't bad. It's come a long way than the original GoPros, which were the sports cameras. Just had no capacity for capability for recording sound. It was terrible. Anyway, so this is the Sony's the best, most convenient, most consistent sound recording, most useful for this kind of thing. But I think the GoPro Session is probably good enough. I'll be interested to see what it does with the high noise levels of our band. And when I say high noise levels, I mean high noise levels, outdoor gig or not, family event or not. Okay, I've still got a bit of, don't wimp out here, you've got clear fresh air under there. Let's just keep it opened up so it doesn't sitar again. So that's the string oscillating in such a way that it was just hitting in the slot it was in. It was causing that sitaring noise, which was horrible. I think I'm on the mark there. So that's those three. Solved the sitaring, which is a tiny little detail, but you could hear the difference, and it makes all the difference. I mean, literally all the difference. You would hate to play with that, but that's fixed it. And a newcomer, you know, beginner, wouldn't know why that was doing what it was. It would just be an upsetting and annoying sound. And it would probably bug them for quite some time, and they would get frustrated and write the guitar off as crap. And, you know, probably. I think what happens is, if you get things like that wrong, then it kind of encourages, it can't help but to encourage a newcomer to fall into the big brand mythology, you know. So, you know, his mates will be going, "You bought a Harley Benton Telecaster, you muppet, you know. Why didn't you save your money and get a proper one?" And then, you know, then the tiniest of little problems like that, you know, just being unbearable, and you took it along to practice with your mates and stuff, and they would hear that zing sitar noise, and it would sort of give some truth to their claim, and then, you know, the person would fairly easily believe that, well, that's what you get when you buy a cheap Chinese guitar. And so, you know, somebody, before you know it, is bought into the whole thing about spending more money to get a half decent playing guitar. Now, the point is, you do have to, because, you know, you either spend it in getting a setup, or you spend it in, hopefully, getting a guitar where this is done. But this is a pretty easy mistake to make, and I have to say, spending more money isn't a guarantee of these types of things being right. Certainly isn't in terms of the levelness of the frets. That doesn't relate to the price point very clearly at all. So yeah, so it's a shame if such a minuscule little problem, you know, would help somebody to grow, you know, get frustrated with the guitar and then sort of give it up and not persevere and invest time and maybe a bit of setup money into it, and instead go looking for a big pricey thing and become part of that movement there where you've got to spend more. I can see where somebody's already hand cut these nuts, and they've just clinked onto run into the edge of the head, the edge of the fingerboard here. It's quite interesting. So it looks like it's been done by hand. Okay, the reason I get it up to approximate tension is just to make sure that the string is sitting in the slot properly. It's not sticking some of the way down or half the way down, because that can give you a very false reading. And actually, in the past, I've kept on cutting the slot when in fact you didn't need to. And then you finally put the tension on properly, and pow, the string goes all the way to the bottom of the hole you've already dug, and suddenly you're touching the first fret and you have to start again, knock it out and put a new nut in. So anyway, in a good plus side, these guys have put a bone nut in this guitar for £116. On the not so good side, it's not cut particularly well. The first fret action was all too high by my book, but probably more significant is that it was cut in such a way that you could hear that sitaring noise, which will just make it unbearable actually. It's just incredible how little tiny things like that make all the difference. But I think the problem is that a newcomer to it, you know, and of course this is aimed at the newcomer to this wouldn't know where to start to diagnose what was causing that. It would all be kind of new to them. So you have to have had some experience to think of where to look. And I was pretty sure that it would be something to do with the nut slot. Now I'm working with a slightly warped file, that one, so it's starting to make that difficult, so I'm going to have to make sure I keep the slot as wide as it can be to allow me to keep on cutting but without getting the file caught. So that's a bit of space that helps, but again, each time it sort of clags up, then I need to just open that a bit with the V-notch. I think we're pretty much right on it at the moment. Tiny bit more. As you can see, these thicker strings, they start to get quite hard to work, and I suppose in another good sense that they're hard to work, but they're also harder to I think quickly overcut, which is a good thing. Okay, so now we're heading to the final one. Now, once upon a time when I did this, I would have done all the I would have done the fret leveling first and then done the setup stuff afterwards, because that's how I learned it, kind of same as everybody else. But the nice thing is doing it with this method is I have to do the precision setup first to get the action exactly where I want it in those three components: the bridge, or the last fret action, the first fret action, and the neck relief. And once that's done, that's the precision setup part done, and then all inverted commas I have to do then is make the frets comply. And that's where the leveling comes in. But in a way, the careful action setting is all being done right now, right at the beginning. So it's a nice way around. I like it that way around. It feels quite a good way of doing it. Okay, not far off now. Yeah, so that's a turn up for the book that this had a bone nut on it. I think it's the first Harley Benton I've come across that had one to begin with. So this, I don't know whether this was. No, this didn't come directly to me from Harley Benton. Ha! Duh. This came to me from somebody, or from Rich. I would say directly, but possibly bought second hand from someone else. So it could be that someone else has fitted this. It's probably more than likely that that's what's happened, that somebody's bought this, fitted the bone nut, done those little, cut those little marks in the fingerboard, and yeah, that's probably what's happened. Right, very nearly there. So you can see that at these very minimal first fret action heights, there's almost hardly anything lifting it off above the fingerboard here, and because we're going back, it's hardly anything off the fingerboard at the back. There we are, we're on. So that's that. Okay, so let's get this out of the way. And still piddling down. So now we have a different feeling thing. It's not a chord obviously because I can't play. Yeah. Okay, we've got the action now fully set the way I want it. It's still very flat, or relatively very flat. But I'll go with that. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do the... I can't... I have to... forward. Oh, it's all odd. It's all on the wrong side. Back to front. There's not a lot of room with these things. Now, there's pinging now. This is working well. The pinging you're going to find is coming now from the string trees, which is why I don't like these metal ones at all. I don't have any more tusk ones to put in, but it would raise the cost of things because they're not cheap, but I do recommend that you invest in them to make this guitar as good as it should be. Oh God, back to front, very back to front. But yeah, those string trees definitely cause the strings to ping, even when you've got the nut sorted out. Okay. My cat's meowing. Every time I see one of these Harley Bentons, I keep thinking, ooh, you know, full thickness body. I've got a neck over there with brand new gold Evo frets that would just go so great on a HB body. But then I think, why would I be putting aside a perfectly good neck? Because there's nothing much wrong with this Harley Benton neck. So why would I be putting that aside just for the sake of having the more Fender shape? It's a bit fanboyish, isn't it, really? So I think I should join the modern age and stop worrying about this Harley Benton shape. It's only a shape after all. It works perfectly well. Come on. You get there. Yeah, these strings have definitely gone a bit rotten over time. All kinds of rust and gunge at this end, some of which is getting stuck in the nut by the looks of it. Oh, I can hear it. Right, let's just get tuned up one more time. that part of it done. Okay, so now we go on to what for some of you will be the tediously boring fret leveling process. For others, the miraculous, I've never seen this before, it's all new to me, fret leveling process. And actually it's pretty elegant and amazing. But so we have our 3 little brass feet that perform the job of calibrating, helping to calibrate this tool. Now this is now fully slacked off, and I know that it has a bit of curvature already in it, so okay, it's good. It's not at default, it's not too curved, so we now can adjust it, add in some curvature, and we're just about there. So here we go. Pull that out, space out the string, get our banana fret leveling tool with our 400 grit paper, and begin gentle process of fret leveling. And I'm going to do a little bit and then stop and read the tea leaves. So no cut, cutting, a little bit, none, a little bit, none, some, fair bit, some, none. So the last 5, none. But everything else is starting to cut, and it's cutting at all different parts of the fretboard, so I know it tells me my calibration is good. If it was just cutting in one place or either or both ends, okay, do some more. Yeah, if it was just cutting in one place or in the middle or both ends together, then I would suspect the calibration of the bar needed adjusting or recalibrating. So the aim is to get the bar to mimic, well, as precisely as possible, the curvature in the neck, and then we place it on the frets, and we let it level away, so it's leveling the frets relative to each other, and it's following in the curve of the neck. So it's like 2 C shapes, one inside the other. Okay, so now I can see where it's getting to. Cutting everything now. It's just these last few. I'd say there's one low one here and 3 low ones at the end that may still cause a bit of trouble at this low action. I mean, it is a low action. It may end up having to compromise. Now, the reality is that a hard struck string is always going to hit the frets, particularly if you've got a flat neck, unless you've got a ridiculously high action. So for a low action and a flat neck means that striking a string hard at all is almost certainly going to cause it to hit the frets. So I'm going to do a little bit more, and I'm going to double check, because once I think everything's as level as I'm going to get it, we have to watch out that we don't get into a sort of law of diminishing returns especially with Telecasters in my experience. I don't know why, but it can be quite tricky. Okay, so looks like it's where it should be, and if it's making, see now, that is a clean note, but if you hit it harder you will cause it to strike the thingy. Now what I'm going to do, just looking at this, I think what's missing from this arrangement is enough room. So I'm going to give this another small tweak just to put a little bit more curvature into the neck. And we can do this at this stage because all we have to do is continue to adjust the tool to level. It's leveling relative, so now all that's happened is the frets have moved relative to each other, and when this has done a little bit of moving, which I hope it will do fairly quickly, that's a bit more, it's still pretty flat. Yeah, when it moves, all that happens is the frets are moving relative, their levelness is moving relative to each other, and we'll just adjust the tool to take that into account. Okay. Right. Let's just try playing these notes now. Yeah, so that's improved that. So it's just taken away, so it's not slapping so much. That's the cost of an ultra flat board. You know, when people like flat board, well, it's okay if you have either incredibly flat frets, level frets I should say, and or you have a higher action at the bridge end. But if you have a low action, you're not going to, and you strike the strings hard, you're not going to get away with a flat neck, because those strings need room to move. Okay, so I'm going to do the A track now. And again, watching out to see what it tells me about the way it cuts up. Yep. Again, there's 3 lowish ones at the end, and everything else is cutting, and that's good. As you've probably seen from the other videos, it always looks like you're taking more than you are, because you get dust building up and you see the flattened tops of the frets, and it does look, you know, when you're new to it, it looks pretty, it looks like you're on a rampage really, but it isn't anywhere near as much as it looks. That's the first thing to try and keep in mind as you're doing it. The dust is always more than it actually is. Okay. So, I think with this one, I think what I'm probably going to do is probably get to a certain point tonight. It's 9 o'clock now, yeah, I think I'll stop before too long. I'll do the fret leveling, then I'll stop and I'll come back to it tomorrow. And then finish this tomorrow, and then start with the Strat one as well. And then finish that on Saturday, summertime. That's all good. A little bit of zing at the end there. I'll just recalibrate, just to be on the safe side. It never hurts to recalibrate lots of times. Do it more than you need really. Better to do it more often than less often, because that way you won't go wrong. If you calibrate if your calibration goes off, you can maybe hollow out the middle of the neck too much, or take too much off one end. But if you keep checking and recalibrating, you won't go wrong. Okay, and when you get to a certain number of setups using this, you'll get a kind of an instinct for it. Like that. So I knew that would be on, and then we move on. So you can see if you squint at this, you'll see that big pile of black dust building up from the frets, and that's basically a sign of where the trouble is on this neck. Not always the case, it's not always in the same place. There isn't any hard and fast rule. It can be in different places depending on how the neck was made. Too curved now. Not curved enough. Patience. Good. Again, it's that sort of, don't ever just assume it's there, just keep going until you get the balance exactly right. Because it's that tiny difference of a tenth of a millimetre that will make all the difference to getting the correct clearance, getting absolutely buzz-free action. Okay, looking good. Glad to get rid of these dirty strings. Do a tiny bit more. I'm going to calibrate it again just to be sure. I think I need a little bit more dip in the middle there. That's what my instinct's telling me. Well, that's not what the bar is telling me, so, but I think I need to make sure it pays attention to that middle part where it's slightly zinging still. So, next one. So you can see we're nearly there. And of course, I haven't said this for a long time on video, but when you see the time this takes to do this, you can start to understand why it's not done on guitars in the factory. Almost, you know, when the price is the kind of primary area of competition. Quite an incredible thing to try and imagine the scantness of the margins involved in this sort of thing. I've never, as a business person or as a guitar tech, I've never played into the price competition or the price. Never been in a price war, and I don't intend to. Well, no, I don't intend. I won't be, because it's a thankless place to be in. It really is only ever a race to the bottom in terms of prices. But when you see a company like this, they've you know, their profits depend on vast scale. And same with all the other manufacturers of guitars undercutting each other by a few pounds. But there's no way that the profit margin on this could tolerate somebody spending even an hour or two taking care of small, fine details like that sitaring note, you know, the condition of the nut slots, or the, you know, this fine-tuned action. There's just no way. Yeah, the profit margins are way too small. And like I say, I would hate to be in that arena, just fighting, you know, trying to undercut or find ways of cutting costs, because the only thing you can really compete on is price. It's, I mean, it makes millions for somebody. You know, it's not a bad business model, but it's a very unsentimental one, and a very merciless one as well. But yeah, there's no way. I think as I've seen, some of the factories seem to have done very basic, quick swipes with a radius block and to level the frets, which actually is quite doable within the sort of manufacturing process, but and takes barely 10 seconds to do. So it's not a bad option compared to doing nothing at all. But beyond that, you just can't afford to do it. And you know, the fact that Rich and I guess all the other 600-700 people who've had me do this with their guitars over the last 4 years now, you know, they're not getting a £116 guitar, they're getting a £216 guitar. Yeah, so the true cost of it is really factored back in. So you always have to think of it in those terms. You know, whether it's, you know, if you say to yourself, is this a good value guitar? Well, not. Well, before you can answer the question, you have to factor in the cost of doing this to it. So, at £216, is this a good value guitar? Given that you need to do the same sort of work to pretty much any guitar, then actually it doesn't turn out to be bad, because it's a good, you know, once you've done this is every bit as good as most of the Squiers. The only one that I would say is a rarity, in that it tends to start off being extremely good from the outset, and that's the Classic Vibe series, which are, in my book, almost faultless. So they do stand apart from something like this. So the problem with doing this, if you spend money setting up a Harley Benton, and then maybe, you know, you think, well, actually, since I've done that, let's put some pickups of my choosing in, and you might spend £150 on some pickups, then you're looking at what, 216 and then 150, 360 quid, and for that you could have bought yourself a very tidy Classic Vibe, and possibly even new. For that you would have got the stock pickups, of course, and but you know, you're nearly into that territory. So the truth is, a good guitar costs, actually the Classic Vibe is a very good example of what a good guitar can be and what it can cost. I'd love to know what it is that they've got so right in there that they don't get so right with the other guitars. You know, it could be that there's a distinct push to make something better than the rest of the range. People do that. It might sound odd that you'd make substandard things, but there can be reasons behind why certain things are so good. I know I've probably said this before, but I remember in the 80s, 90s or something, after a period of time when Honda had a particularly bad decade or something for reliability on their motorcycles, and I remember they brought out the Honda, the VFR 750, which, well, look, here go the ferrules, watch out, they're all falling out, that's not what we want, come on. Yeah, so they brought out the VFR 750 after a sort of long period of development, and it was recognised by people in the biking world to be so far above its price point in terms of quality that it had to have been a sort of corporate decision to spend, I suppose you could say, whatever it took to regain the reputation for reliability and quality. And you know, it was sort of quite legendary in its day for being, I suppose, a lost leader to regain the sort of position in the market. So sometimes, you know, manufacturers end up doing that. So you never know, that the classic Vibe might be an example of that. Now this has just gone and made things difficult for me, because I've tried to separate out these. Do you know what, I can't be bothered, it's too much like hard work. I was trying to separate these out to reuse them, but they've also now come out with the ferrules on, which means I have to find ways to untangle them, which is now going to be just an absolute pain in the what's it. So I'm not going to play that game, and these can go in the bin without being reused. At least they're going in the recycling. You can depend on that. Right, so these ferrules are a little bit on the loose side right this second, so I don't want to glue them in, that's not my remit exactly, but what I will do is I'll just tape them over for the time being so that they don't fall out and disappear under the workbench. Right, so the last thing I'm going to do tonight before I knock off is I'm going to just profile these frets. So this is where we reshape them, having flattened the tops of them in pursuit of relative levelness, but we don't want them with the flattened plateaus, because that makes them uncomfortable to play, but it also shifts the point of intonation from the centre of the fret to the edge nearest the bridge. And on this amount of fret levelling, it probably won't have that significant an impact, but ultimately it can do, so it's not what you want. So to re-profile it means to take a concave crowning file, it's called, and I'm going to use the jumbo side of it. Is it jumbo or medium jumbo? I think it's medium. So I'm going to use the M side of it. Interestingly, StewMac never marked up themselves. I have to write it on, scratch it on. The idea is to just use that diamond surface to gently grind off what I call the shoulders of the flattened fret. So it takes away the sharp shoulders and brings them inwards towards the top of the fret. And the aim is, as you're doing that, is to leave a little strip of black marker pen, if possible, down the centre of the fret, because that then tells you you've done as much reshaping as you can, and yet, because you haven't touched the top of the fret, therefore you haven't reduced its height and therefore not compromised its relative levelness that you've just worked hard to achieve. So it's kind of logical. So that's another good use of the marker pen. Now you can see that I'm moving through these pretty quickly. There's only a few that I have to stop and pay attention to, like this one, and those indicate the ones that were actually the highest in the sequence, so they had the most levelling done. But apart from those, if everything else kind of gets whizzed through, it shows how relatively little material I took off the frets to achieve the levelness. So it goes back to that point I said about it always, oh God, it always looks worse than it is. I'll end up clonking this on the fretboard, or I should say onto the thing. Scratch plate, which is kind of lucky it's there because it's called scratch plate. Anyway, right, so that is that done. The next process will be to mask off the fingerboard and polish all the frets out with a sequence of sandpapers, and I'll do that tomorrow. It's getting a bit later now. I'll do that tomorrow, and once I've done that, then we just need to we go through the series of papers from 600 grit to 1000 to 1500 to a set of micro mesh papers which runs from 1500 right the way through to 12,000, which really polishes out the frets beautifully at that time. At the moment I'm short of supplies of masking tape, so I have to use odd large size stuff at the moment, which is making things take a lot longer, or a bit longer, because I have to cut different unusual sized lengths of the stuff. Anyway, it's possible, just I'll do it off camera because it's a bit boring just cutting up great strips of paper. Okay, so once we've done that and put new strings on and then stretched them out and intonated them, then it's pretty much done, because we tension it up and the guitar reverts to the action we had when it was under tension and we did the leveling, and that's a little bit of a blemish on the fingerboard there. Anyway, so that's that. So I'm going to call time on that for now. I'm going to take this thing in and charge it, since I haven't charged it yet. Done a few different things today. I've done a bit of work on Jay's Anturia. Basically, this thing is, next stop is the fireplace. I've sort of rescued it from oblivion. It should play again. I've flattened the neck out, and I've also now reduced the bridge down to kind of a bit of a shadow of its former self, but it's now just about the thickness. It's not anything like it was in the past. It would have stood much taller in the days when the geometry was much higher, but this is probably just going to be enough to play this guitar for another 10-15 years, and that's the aim. But we've got to refret it. It has a truss rod in it, but it's not adjustable, so it's one of those beautiful old things that I don't know, just put a piece of lead in, no, a piece of steel in there, and hoped it would yeah, stay in shape, but it didn't. After 50 odd years of hard playing, it eventually assumed quite a significant perma-curve, which is why I've had to literally sand and file it out. Okay, so that's it for now. I'll see you tomorrow for finishing off. Hey, here we go. Time to polish out the oh yeah, here's me lining up to show you this. I think I'll just stop this and do the thing and come back. Right, bye. Hey, let's get on with it. So the polishing out and shining up done, so it's time to re-fretify. So we need, no, not re-fret, re-stringify. So we need the big one at the bottom. Obviously have to be a little bit careful so all these thingies, ferrules, don't come flying out. Right, let's start it this way. Let's push them through. Okay, number one. That's not a very good view, I'm afraid. Number one, number four. So, not too busy a Friday. Well, doing a bit of day job work, and then the fun part is get out into the shed and do this work, which I like. I've got one more to do tonight, and that's Richard's Stratocaster Harley Benton Strat style thing. ST something or other, I've forgotten the name of it. Anyway, so I'm going to get this one finished, and I'm going to make a start on that one and maybe finish it off tomorrow. And once that's done, I have to focus on a couple of other things, including playing a gig on Sunday, which I'm going to do a bit of close listening to a few of the songs we do. see if there's any bits I can pick up that I don't normally do as the rhythm guitarist, but can add a bit of flavour. Because this sort of stage in learning things, it seems that I'm just going to put another piece of tape over these a minute, just so I don't want them to fall right out while I'm doing that. It'll just get pointlessly annoying. Yeah, so I enjoy playing rhythm guitar. I love, most of all, I like making a rhythmic noise. You know, and so there are certain songs that I just really enjoy playing if I can really get into the rhythm part, you know, literally as the name suggests. So I mean, I like other songs where I can do a bit more of the lead part, but in terms of the rhythm, there are some songs that are just so so distinct. I mean, I don't know, I'm trying to think of one now. Take for example, I don't know, You Really Got Me by the Kinks. I mean, that's a bit of an obvious rhythm-y, guitar-y song, but it's a very distinctive tone, or distinctive rhythm guitar, and it really makes the song, you know, and you've got to be really confident to keep that rhythm all the way through. You've got to be able to do it cleanly as well. Now this is, I'm not terribly used to doing left-handed strats on Teles, so I'm going to sort of struggle to do this a little bit. Yeah, so I mean that's one of them, but it's quite a simple song in a way. It is a very simple song. But there's some others that I like. We play Let Me Entertain You by Robbie Williams, and that's mostly what I do in that is rhythm. Definitely very rhythm guitar. But I think it's why I like things like reggae as well, and ska. Why isn't this going down the hole? It's because it hasn't got a hole to go down. These are slightly, not cheap exactly, but they're imitation, close on vintage style things. I like the ones where the string can go quite a long way down the hole. Gives you a degree of confidence in it. Anyway, yeah, so I realised that I gravitate towards reggae beats because I really love playing the rhythm part, or it accentuates the rhythm part. So whenever I'm with a band and we're playing something like Knocking on Heaven's Door, it's always me that turns it into the reggae-fied version. I find it too boring to be the, you know, when it's the Guns N' Roses big caranging guitar, electric guitar, big long sustaining chords, and they can be sort of pleasant, or they can feel good in some places. Like, I don't know, one that's quite nice to play is Sweet Child of Mine, for example, because it's got a really nice, the way the opening chords play against the lead and the bass is fantastic. It's a really nice feel to play that, but it doesn't go down very far at all. It's really weird. Anyway, thank you. But yeah, so I do gravitate towards wanting to play more staccato, not staccato, you know what I mean, more defined rhythm. I like that a lot. And I suppose it does kind of hark back a bit to some of the more newer waver 80s stuff in England, or Britain I should say. You know, where rhythm guitar was, I don't know, if I keep thinking of Wilko Johnson, that sort of really choppy style. It's just really rewarding to play. So consequently the Police or Bob Marley or Pete, what's his name, you know, I always say Tosh, but it's not Tosh, it's Tom, isn't it? It was Pete Tosh. Or BJ or something. I don't know. But anyway, yeah, good reggae. Get down there. Almost there. Get this downwards. Okay. It's a bit funny doing it left-handed. Okay. Right, there we have it. Strunged and ready to make sure everything's on first before we do a proper stretch out. If it's not on properly, you'll hear things go kind of pop or snap at this point. Yeah, that things move when you give them a good tug like that. Right, make sure everything is kind of, that is, well, it's waiting to tighten up. Right, let's put these bits out of the way. Do you like my own custom built T? I love this guitar. Gold Evo frets, HHS coil split, 5 positions, little short Wilkinson bridge, weighs a ton, made from chocolate Eki, 3-bolt neck, copper jack plate. It's Eki and oak together, and this is a recycled neck, or an upcycled neck from a water damaged Westfield Telecaster. The body got burned because it was, I burned it because it was made of plywood, and it was just horrible. Not because plywood's in and of itself worth burning, but that one it was strictly horrible. So I kept the neck and really liked it by the time did I reshape it? Yeah, I think I did. Did I? I think so. Not sure what shape, I can't remember what shape it was. Maybe it was already Tele shaped. But yeah, refinished it, put the logo on it and stuff. It's desperate to fall over. Let's try it that way. And despite the fact the headstock is a little bit like that, kind of goes with the rest of the body, which also the Eki part of the body dried out a little bit after having made it, and I guess about a month or two, by the time a month or two had passed, the Eki part had gone like that with the oak on top, so it's now got quite a nice organic curve to it, and of course where it dried it went a little bit out of shape with the edges of the thing, which I then sanded back, so now it just looks like it was meant that way, which of course it wasn't. But it's nice, it's a really lovely feel, and it's great to play. Can't do this back to front. Sorry. You try doing this backwards. Right, well, we've got a lovely low action. Everything's back to where it was, and I'm just really doing some more stretching. It's got 10s on, remember, so it's quite hard to play bends anyway. I mean, for my little delicate fingers it is anyway. But actually I'm putting 10s on that one, and that one's going to the gig with me on Sunday. I'm taking 2 oak fronted guitar, well, one solid oak guitar and one oak topped guitar down to the gig in the town. I'm spoiled, I've got plenty to choose from. I'm going to take my oak caster headless which I've got a GoPro camera now mounted on it, which is brilliant. I did a little test film, which is great fun. I'm going to take that and film us playing, and then I'll also take either that Tele down there, or I kind of half mind to take my strap, my parts caster. Ow! A little tiny ping there on the top E, high E, so that will need a little bit of sandpaper in there, just to make sure it's wide enough. Right, I'll do one more set of pulls and then this one is ready for intonating. Now with the Harley Bentons, so far they've all turned out to be intonated well out of the box, which is not too difficult to do really, because you can intonate to a pattern, providing your manufacturing is pretty dependable. You know where the bridge is meant to be in position, and if you do put these guitars together or inspect them 24 hours a day, you'll know where things lie. Something would have to be quite significantly out of line for it to change where the bridge saddles sit. Right, let's just do the intonation now, and I might do a little bit more additional stretching. For the intonation, you know what, it's really humid in Britain at the moment. We had a period of really good dry weather, but now it's gone to just threatening rain. Tomorrow should be quite nice, and the day after, but it's only for our outdoor gig. But it's kind of 83% relative humidity in the workshop here, which isn't bad, but it's when the temperature's, it's 19 degrees, when the temperature's up and the humidity's up, of course it feels a bit of a, let's get this the right way around, a bit of a bath tub experience. Right, so we've got a clean sound ideally. We'll get a screwdriver out ready in case we need it. Look at that, see it? Pretty much on. That's interesting. So because these come in pairs, now we've got an A that is too long, sorry, too short, too long. But if we push this outwards to, this takes a bit of push to reduce the length, to change that intonation. What happens is, because they're in pairs, it'll change the one so much. It looks like it. That one's saying it's a bit too long, so let's pull that one back a bit. Now it is possible to get one string that's completely out, and I've had it happen a few times, pinging on the nut slots there. So if we were to push this back out further to I guess align it for this A, note to self, sandpaper in the slot, all the while stretching as well. Saying it's too long, so we'll push that forward too. Well, I take it back about everything being exactly in the right place. Let's push the low ones forward now as well, based on what not low ones, high ones forward, based on what I can see. But we'll basically, because they're in pairs, I'm going to have to compromise. It's always going to be a sort of trade-off. You might you either put them in between a pair, or you put one on and accept the other one is off if it is. Let's go again. But like I said, it can also be one string can be throwing it off. That is very distinctly flat. So to actually get that to where the A wants it, we have to go quite some distance out. Share a pair, and the D is pretty much on. But the G is sharp, so we need to pull that back a little bit, and that gets in between the two of them. Now let's go for the E and the B, or the B and the E. Sharp. A little bit sharp. So pull back on those two both. So it's a little tricky. You might find that the next string change changes it. Yeah, never would have. Never would have believed that you can get a string that looks perfectly good and yet throws it out so much. Well, that's going to have to live there. It's a sort of balance between all of them. So what you've seen there, Rich, is why many people, when they get a guitar like this, immediately change the bridge over or change the set. Well, change bridge or saddles. I think I read somebody somewhere, was it on the Tobin site, that this is, I think, maybe there's something about the saddles that they said they didn't switch over sort of perfectly. They're slightly different size from a normal Fender, I think. I don't know, don't quote me on that, but, and I can't remember having changed these over. I think the person in the end said they changed the entire bridge over, which is perfectly doable. The only thing you have to make sure is that the through holes line up. That's the only bit. If you're going to go and buy one, be very careful that you know the spacing, the distance from the front to the back. You've got to duplicate this basically. You can't, if you're going to replace the whole thing. Better if you can start with saddles that just switch out. But basically, people, as almost a first thing, is replace these 3 dual ones with 6 individual ones, so that you can individually adjust. I have a feeling that that A may be something to do with the string as much as anything. I think it's brand new, straight out of the packet. It's got desiccant and everything. It's silver foiled, so there's nothing gone wrong with it over time, but just once in a while you will get a string that behaves differently and needs its saddle to be in a different place. Now, it's technically you're still intonating it, even if it stands out of the pattern and it looks odd. But the problem with this one is because they're in pairs, we can't accommodate for that strange A string and its peculiar intonation requirements on this instance. But that's the sort of limitation of the pairs, the 3 pairs system. Okay, so that's this one done, Rich. I hope it was useful and interesting. Moreover, I hope you enjoy playing it. I'm going to do a little bit of work just before I go on each of these. Tiny bit of widening on each of these. Just 1 or 2 of them have a little bit of, I don't know what it would be, pinging as the strings are going through. So I'm using 600 grit here, and I'm just pushing sideways, and all I want to do is create enough even though I cut the slots oversize, if you remember, with the choice of the files, still worthwhile. You still will get a little bit of, a tiny bit of gripping here and there, and that really does upset the tuning. So if you can, always worth doing is to get in here with your blade and file sideways. Try not to lower the slot any more than it is. Yeah, it's a really good thing to do. I always say, and lots of people have probably heard this already, but you see a lot of guitars on eBay being bought and sold with nut slots that are just gunged up with graphite from pencils in the slots here. My rule of thumb is always take care of it this way. You know, people will tell you, oh, it's a great solution, stick graphite in the slot, and the point is, it'll only get back to sticking again. You know, once the graphite's been dragged out of the way, you will find that the tuning is once again unstable. So why just set yourself up for that? Why not take care of it this way? So get your piece of 600 grit, your two sides of the same blade really. And then go through each of the, I mean, listen out, obviously, as I was doing, listen out for the pings. They'll tell you where you've got the problem, but even if you haven't, it's worth just going through each of these slots with the 600 grit. I found that usually you can do it all with the either the thick side of a craft knife or the blade side. Little pinging there, you can hear it on the top E. Now this time top E is quite a tiny little hole, and then chucking all of this blade plus paper in is probably a bit too much, so to be very careful, maybe run it through once or twice if you can, and then if necessary get in there with just the paper. That will also hopefully minimise the chances of you going lower, which you don't want to do. And as you're tuning, listen for the pings. That was enough. Right, there we go. Little trade secrets right at the end there that always work. Get that right first, and then you'll never have to slather this with that horrible looking graphite, which, you know, it does a temporary job, but it isn't any good in the long term, I tell you, because it'll come back. All right, there you go. Thanks for spending time with me on this one. Let's see where we are. We're still running. We're gonna, I'm just actually, oh god, I need several hands to lift this up. I'm contemplating at the moment whether this thing needs some new strings. Gave it a new nut today as well, so that's good. Yeah, I'll probably put some new strings on. Why don't I? Yeah. This is a beautiful piece. As I say, it's now slightly curved this way. One of the reasons I knew how I could see how curved it was is that it eventually became nigh on impossible. It may still be, no, it's come down while it's drying now, but actually at the time it became impossible to get the electrics cover off, which is a mixture of magnetic and, yeah, it's held on magnetically, but it got to a point where I had to actually take this off and sand everything down there because the shrinking of the Eki had basically grabbed hold of it and trapped it, and that was your lot. So it's probably could do with a little bit more sanding actually right now, but it's a pretty snug fit. Actually, you know what, I'll do that while I'm at it. Ain't no harm in that, is there? But it is a fab guitar. So I've made two Eki T style guitars now. One of them Hugh bought last week, took home, which is a signal honour for me because he's a really great long time customer, or probably a better word is a client and a friend. So, you know, clients being, I guess, people that you have a long term business relationship and you get to know quite a bit better, I think. But yeah, he bought my prototype, which was an absolute thrill really, because when I made that guitar for the first time, I could tell that the T shapes were really going to work for me, and they have. This is I don't know why I never really liked them. There you go. I never really I wasn't a sort of T-shaped person when I was growing up, but for making they're just fantastic shape. And this one's a little bit cinched in a bit in the middle because the original template I used, which was a copy of, it was a copy of one I had here, just drew around it, but I had a router accident just about there, and so to overcome that I kind of redesigned it so it had a little bit of a more of a narrow waist on both sides, so it's a little bit off the Fender spec, but and this is quite heavy because even though it's got weight relief in it, it still came out pretty chunky. Or the Eki's, you know, incredibly dense, but it has a great sound. and it provides the iron gear pickup here provides enough power to cut through anything just as is, and it drives the amp really well, and it's splittable. And actually it's very, very not sharp, it's got a lot of treble in it, so you can really get to use the tone button for what it was meant for. Then when you come up to the neck, that's a lot creamier and thicker, and actually in my playing this really benefits from having Big Stevie's treble booster, that lovely grey single button treble booster that he gave me, very kindly gave me. And that always comes on in these top two positions there, and then the rest just goes into the crunch channel, which is fantastic sound. So, but yeah, I can feel the just very slight difference. I could re-sand this and maybe re-oil it again at some point in the future. As long as it stays together, I'm happy. And this was only ever, you know, a prototype as well, just to test out. But I really like the oak and the Eckie together. I've got quite a bit more Eckie, and what I'm going to do is get my local what do you call them, joinery place to do me some more, even better. This is nearly good enough, it's not quite right. So as you can see by the tiny seam showing, so we're nearly there. But I want to get some more pieces. I'm thinking, was this? Oh, actually, maybe I jointed this. But I'm going to take a stock down to the joiners and get them to absolutely perfectly edge this Eckie stuff, which is quite difficult to do because it's so dense. But once we've got that, then I've got material that I can you know, make more of these guitars out of, and it has just this gorgeous golden quality in it. It's hard to see in the sunlight, but this one is just lightly oiled really, and it probably just benefit from an oiling every 6 months. You know, give it a clean, oil it up and stuff, and check for any seams showing because of any more drying. But it is a great guitar to play. Yeah, so what was I going to do? I was going to restring. Maybe I'll do that tomorrow. I'll play it, give it a bit of a play tonight. Right, there you go. So Telecaster afternoon. Next step will be Harley Benton Strats. We'll see you in a bit.